So I am going to go ahead and continue. Waiting will give me peace when having submitted God's will for my life, which means that if you desire to be married and you're called to be married, if that is God's will for you, then it will be for you. God has a plan for all of our lives. Personally, I know many women who want to be successfully married and that God calls them to be married one day. But just because you want to be married doesn't guarantee you will be. But if God calls you to marriage, He will give you the desire for marriage. If you have the desire for marriage, it also means you have the calling for marriage. But even if you don't see marriage in the timeline you desire, or if you don't get married, you know that you have submitted, to God's will for your life, because what is God's desired plan for your life will be for your life, period. That means even going through things that we don't want to go through. Remember, Christ didn't want to go to the cross, but He did. He knew that even if He didn't want to go, He knew obeying His Father would get the most joy. And we can see that in Hebrews chapter 12, verse 2. So it's saying that if we look to, the joy ahead while remaining faithful to God in our waiting and submitting to His will for our lives, we are sure to see blessings, whether it be a godly spouse or purpose and peace in singleness. It would be His will. So I am going to continue with part 3, waiting. When wanting to marry an unequally yoked unbeliever, why we must not. If I am unequally yoked to someone in marriage, what does that mean? And what could the outcome be? It's like if you are a Christian and he is not a believer, in faith, that is unequally yoked. Is it important to be equally yoked to our mates? Yes, because being equally yoked means you're both believers and you're headed towards the same spiritual goals in the marriage, and you're both, your hearts are both attached to Jesus. So your marriage may last with few problems, and if or when you do, you're most likely to handle them and still, have a successful marriage. I didn't always know this. I learned this. Okay, so let's look at the verse, 2 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 14. Do not be unequally yoked together with unbelievers. And it's not just saying married. For what fellowship has righteousness with lawlessness, and communion has light with darkness? Simply, we can't expect to be on the same paths with believers if we are unbelievers. It will be mismatched and it won't work. One will go this way and one that way. We can't be on the straight path and following and living a life in Christ. I have struggled with this, even just having friendships or with a family member or members. It's not gonna work. So I say, as believers, we just have to have His word within, everything we do, even in our marriage. We need Him in everything we do, relationships, friendships, work, we need Him, being a believer. So when we don't, things go left and turn out bad for us. When we go off on our own and not heed and, not take heed, in the danger of being unequally yoked between individuals who are an unequally yoked unbeliever. We can encounter unwanted situations and circumstances in a marriage. It's important to talk to a mate. It's impossible, to talk to a mate who is an unbeliever. Sometimes because one may have a faith that requires them not to acknowledge or speak about Christ when marrying or married to an unbeliever. It can be hard and difficult, as well as individuals who are unequally yoked unbeliever. It will be hard, to be straight, be on that straight path. So There are some who may listen and not act out depending on how deeply they feel negatively about Christianity, but I love the verse and will probably quote it again and again. I love this verse. When talking about the knowledge of Christ in every place, 2 Corinthians 2:14, but thanks be to God who leads us in triumph in Christ and manifests through us the sweet aroma of the knowledge of him in every place. He asks that we spread the knowledge of him in every place, even in our marriage, in our relationships, in any situation or circumstances. We can share him in any moment. And that is even with, we can even try to share him with an unbeliever, but it will be hard if they don't want to listen, or if they object to what we're saying. So it's going to be hard. So you can't expect to be straight or have straight relationships, being unequally yoked, to an unequally yoked unbeliever. So you can't expect it to just be smoothly. It's not going to work. So when we can't do that with an unbeliever and one being a spouse, it can be hard. We would have problems and we would not be able to overcome those problems most times. So that is why it's important to not be unequally yoked, with an unbeliever when marrying, an unbeliever or any individual who is an unbeliever. Now, if you were to say a different race, that would be another topic. I strongly feel who you choose to marry based on race and, of an equally yoked individual is totally, to each his own. But then some may disagree, with me and say, nope, because you have different cultures that would, then stop them from a marriage. But I'm not, doing an episode on that. And I probably won't. But I believe the best times for me, I've talked about my faith, have been to those friends, etc., who weren't believers. I was able to talk to them, in the past. So it's some that, did, go to church and whatever. I got a few of them, in the past to go. So I don't know if they're still going now, but I did get some to go. So you may have an opportunity minus none to do that when it comes to speaking to unbelievers in other places outside of marriage or relationship. So don't miss out on your opportunity to do so. So this episode is speaking about a spouse as an unbeliever, but we can't omit, that, being an unbeliever, individuals being unbelievers, there can be also bad, outcomes, trying to have relationships with, any relationship, have, any person that's unequally yoked, an unequally yoked unbeliever, any type of relationships, it may not give us the best outcome is what we need to take heed to. So I needed to do this episode since the question came about, and I was told to try to get all this in a 30-minute episode, but it didn't come out that way. But So I needed to get this episode done. So I hope I was able to explain. And if not, you can always go behind me and speak more with your pastor or spiritual advisor for more. My goal is to see success in your marriage or marriage to come. So did you enjoy this episode? I know I did so much. Are you wanting to learn more and what, plan God has for you in your life? Well, visit today the World Bible School at www.worldbibleschool.org. Do you have a topic suggestion or want to be a guest on Evolved? Well, send your request to evolvedtopics@gmail.com. Guys, this is Tialonda, and I want to say thank you guys so much for joining me on this episode, and may we greet again on the next episode of Evolved.